welcome back to another episode of my life being stuck out here in the countryside. As you can see, it snowed, and if I'm walking even funnier than normal, it's because, well, it was more ice than snow. The ground is covered with a pretty thick layer of ice, making it difficult to walk. So, as far as updates today, the government apparently has issued an edict, or whatever you want to call it, saying that everyone is to go back to work on Monday the 17th. Now that doesn't include schools, so if someone happens to be a school teacher watching this somehow, then, nope, you're not going back to work yet, but that they are supposed to open the roads up. I don't know if they've given up on the virus or they've decided that they've isolated it to the areas where they think it's spreading, and everybody else is going to open back up. We'll see. I don't have full confidence that the local authorities are actually going to open the road. As you know, if you've been watching the videos, local authorities haven't exactly been going along with what the central government has been saying, since they said not to block the roads in the first place, and, well, they did anyway. One of the first things I'm going to do, if they open up the roads, is to go get my son's passport. So, once again, I'm not fully confident that this is under control. I know they're doing everything they can right now, but you know, also from watching my videos, that the economic damage is already beginning to look, well, quite severe. Quite severe. I'm going to try and extend this thing so you can get a better view of what's around me. It looks a little prettier than normal with all this snow. Just a little bit of the green stuff sticking up out of the snow. Give you a good look. I figured I'd take my camera out. Someone was asking what kind of camera I use. It's a Sony Alpha 6500. I guess it takes okay pictures. I try. I'm not the best photographer, but I do try to post on Instagram sometimes. I don't usually post pictures of myself. I'm not one of those selfie people. I just share photos of what I see. Mostly stuff here in China, of course. So, again, they're supposed to open up the roads. We'll see. I hope so, in a way, because, well, the way that things are going right now is pretty, well, it's not good. But I think it's already too late, as I said. People aren't going to be going to stores. They're not going to be going to restaurants. So a lot of those kinds of businesses are going to suffer. Some of the hardest hit areas of the country are in Guangdong province, which happens to be where all the tech stuff is made. So your tech stuff, anything that's made in China, like an iPhone, is probably going to suffer supply loss and production problems for a while. So I don't know if the price is going to go up or if there's just not going to be any. It's going to be a mess, I think. Unless Apple has found a way to move their supply line somewhere else and start magically making iPhones in another country, I think that they're going to suffer on supply. So, if you like iPhones, maybe go get one now while you can. I don't know. I'm sure there's enough to last. Just new iPhones might be an issue. I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert on that. Manufacturing isn't my area of expertise, so I really don't know. I'm back inside for a moment. I just wanted to add a couple more things. So just yesterday they added over 2,000, just barely over 2,000 new cases of the virus confirmed in mainland China, with about 142 deaths reported. That's as of 8 o'clock this morning. I guess that would have happened overnight or yesterday. It doesn't sound encouraging, but again, we all knew that this was probably this month we would see the peak of the outbreak. So now we're starting to see all of the cases that were walking around without symptoms starting to show symptoms and come in, and now we're starting to see the numbers really, really go up. The deaths, well, it seems that every day I think we're going to be adding couple hundred, anywhere from 100 to a couple hundred people to that list. Unfortunately, with so many cases of the virus out there, I think that number is, of course, going to grow. We're almost to 70,000 confirmed cases of the virus. Now, I do want to say that quite a few people have recovered, and again, we're never going to have the full picture of what is happening here because, well, most of the people are probably not going to experience, severe symptoms of, or they're not going to have a severe case of the virus, in which case they're not going to go to the hospital because everyone's afraid to go to the hospital because, if they just have the flu or something, they don't want to get put in quarantine with all the other people that do have the virus and then risk getting it. And that's just what's going through people's minds. I'm not saying it's right, but that's sort of what's happening. So I don't think we'll ever have the full picture of what's happening here. And it's not because the Chinese government is covering it up or anything like that. It's just the nature of the situation. We're never going to have the full picture, but we are going to get a better picture of the severe cases as time goes on because, well, they're only just now going to start showing symptoms, and then we're going to find out. And it's unfortunate, but we expected it. So this month, I think, is probably going to be the worst. But they're still talking about opening up the roads on the 17th. So again, I hope that the case is that they have isolated the areas where the virus is really spreading, and they'll probably keep those areas locked down, and the rest, well, I guess the economy needs to get back to work. Otherwise, this country is in real trouble. It's already in real trouble. And every day that they keep people from going back to work, it's just going to get worse. So anyway, back to outside and sunshine and snow and better things. I've just stumbled upon something interesting I wanted to show you guys. Right here is a type of tractor. I know to an American or someone like that, it probably looks like a giant tiller. But the first time I came to this village, believe it or not, that was how I got taken to the house out here. I got a ride on the back of one of these things. So you're thinking, well, it only has 2 wheels and some handles. How does that work as a ride? Well, believe it or not, they attach those things to little trailers, and they use them as a vehicle. So I rode on a little trailer, and they drove with that thing. It's, I guess it's a modern version of the horse and buggy, instead of literally, not like a car, but you're pulled by that thing and you steer with that thing. Those are very versatile. They use them for all kinds of stuff out here. That's a little tractor. I think they've got them in other parts of Asia and probably other parts of the world, but in the U.S., you don't ever see something like that. Okay, I'm approaching the old village now and finding that there's a good bit more mud over here. Well, it seems a little bit more solid than I was expecting. So hopefully I'm not ruining my shoes by walking through this, but this is the direction I'm going today because the road through the field is definitely nothing but mud. So probably wouldn't be very fun to walk through. You guys might enjoy it, but for me, I don't think I would enjoy it so much. Somebody asked a question about how I came to China originally and how I met my wife, all that sort of thing. I touched on that a little bit in another video, but I guess I can go into a little bit more detail. So I had a friend in America, and they encouraged me to go to China. Believe it or not, they had a Chinese restaurant. I talked to them a lot. I used to order from them all the time at work, way back in the day. And my boss also used to talk to me all the time about how he was in the Peace Corps at one point, and he went to the Philippines, and he didn't like it, but he encouraged, it was a big adventure, I guess. But I got the chance to go to China, and I got a bunch of encouragement, so I finally did. And as I mentioned in my other video, at the time, my vision of China was very different than what it actually is here. I was picturing, like the tanks driving through, Tiananmen Square and people getting run over with tanks or shot down by the police or beaten by people. So that was what I thought. And I kept getting encouraged to come out, and I finally did. And wouldn't you know it, it was nothing like what I thought. There weren't tanks driving through squares. I mean, they do have military parades sometimes, but the police weren't beating people down. People were really friendly. Everything was just very different than what I thought. And my impressions of it, of course, I landed in Beijing, so that was very different from where I'm at right now. Very big city, more people than you can ever imagine. And that was a big shock to me because, you know, I'd been to California and Los Angeles. I lived out there for a while. I've been to big cities, or what I thought were big cities in the United States. So I thought, you know, I've been to the big city. How different could it actually be? Well, needless to say, and you're probably saying, well, of course it was different. What were you, some kind of an idiot back then or something? Well, yeah, it was very different. But that was my first trip to China. And I mean, besides Canada, it was actually my first trip outside of the United States. So yeah, a little bit of a shock. Everything was as different as it possibly could be from the United States. I was totally unprepared. It's not like going to the Chinatown or something, you know, in America, or you go to the Chinese supermarket. It's not like that. It's completely different. There are things here that would shock you. Like, for example, the first time I went to eat. Obviously, Chinese people eat different than what they do in the United States. And some of this has changed a little bit over time. But anyway, I went to eat. And of course, they didn't have, you know, forks or knives at the restaurant. And I was eating this shrimp. And it had a shell on it, you know. And I'm going to eat it. And, you know, what do you do with the shell? Well, I'm putting it in a napkin, you know, and setting it on the table or whatever, looking for a trash can, and they're telling me, oh, no, just put it on the table. Just put it on the table. And now, you know, it seems so simple, like, okay, you put it on the table, but when your table manners tell you don't spit on the table or don't spit on the ground or put things, you know, you should wrap it up in a napkin to be polite. That was a very hard one. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure that that's what you want me to do with it? You know, just put it on the table? Yeah, just put it on the table. You know, my friend's telling me. And so, obviously, I'm used to that now. If you eat Chinese food, real Chinese food, it has lots of little bones and things in it. And that's what you do. So, if you come to China, if you feel more comfortable, you can put it on your plate, I guess. But, yeah, that's what they do. Or they'll have a little garbage can by the table and you can put it in there. But that was how it was. And it was a bit of a shock for me trying to eat that way. Luckily, I had some skill with chopsticks. I wasn't the best, but I was at least able to get by. And that was my first meal experience. My second day brought more surprises as far as food is concerned. So on the second day, I decided to go out, and there was like I smelled something that smelled really good. So I go to this little snack stand, and I'm looking, you know, and they have like duck. So I'm seeing like, you know, the normal things. I see there's some wings and there's legs and that sort of thing. And then I'm looking and I'm like, okay, well, there's the feet. That's unusual. And then I'm looking more and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's the head, you know. What do you eat on that? What do you eat on the feet? But yeah, they'll have that. I've still never tried to eat the head. I don't know. I have no idea what exactly they eat. I don't even want to know. But the feet, they love to eat chicken feet, duck feet. It's a popular snack out here. And, well, I'm still not very good at it. I see Chinese people eat it. They'll put the thing in their mouth and they chew it up and they spit out little bones. I guess they just eat the skin. I don't know. It's something I have never been able to master. I can do it and I don't find it strange anymore. I just am not very skilled, I guess, at getting the stuff off the bones and spitting it out. But yeah, that was a bit of a shock, especially to see the duck's head. Like I said, I still have never eaten. I'll eat the duck's tongue. They do eat that. I think they just eat the skin off the head. I've never seen anybody cracking it open or anything. I know that might sound disgusting. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, duck head. Oh man, what an experience that was the first time in China. Food is always going to be the biggest shock, I think. And it was for me. Just the amount of people and the very different types of foods. So besides Hong Kong, which is technically part of China, Beijing is still my favorite city. Now, a lot of people that come out here, expats and foreigners, they would disagree. They probably don't like Beijing. I mean, you have the ones that do and the ones that like Shanghai. I don't know. To me, Beijing is more interesting, and it's more of an acquired taste. I guess that's how I describe it. So at first, when you're there, maybe it wasn't so great. It's there's a lot of pollution and people, and there's a lot of old buildings that all look exactly the same. You'd have to see what I'm talking. I'm not talking about the ancient ones that look. I mean, they have a lot of that too. There's a lot of all kinds of buildings in Beijing, but there are these old apartment blocks, and if you're there, you can get lost because everything looks exactly the same. You get out, especially in a place like Fengtai district, which is where I lived way back when. You get out and everything looks identical off the subway. And the only way to find your way back home is to go back into the subway and look at the map and figure out where your exit is. So, yeah, that was kind of hard at first, but as I said, it's an acquired taste, I guess. I still miss living out there, even to this day. I paid a visit back just a little bit ago and went to a few of the places that I used to know. Visited an old noodle shop. I was surprised to see it was still there. I've got a picture of it on Instagram. The bowl of noodles wasn't as big, but the place is still there. I remember they used to grill food in there too, so you could get like different types of grilled meat. There was one that I used to get, and then I found out it was chicken hearts. That's right, chicken hearts. I mean, I still ate it. It wasn't bad. I just didn't know that was what it was at first. There were other things that were obviously organ meat that I learned to avoid after the first time ordering them. They didn't exactly have words on the menu. They had pictures, fortunately. And as long as you know one phrase, you can just point at something and say, "Juga." And then you can order things if there's pictures. If not, then you've got to learn at least what you're looking for. So, in that case, back then I was able to just get by with that. Just point at the picture of the noodles, point at the picture of the grilled stuff, and then tell them "Juga," which is, basically like saying "this one." And that's how I got by. Now, my first stay in Beijing was only for like a couple weeks. I mean, I didn't just stay in Beijing. I was there for most of the time, but I also went out to Anhui province. That was when I first met Grandma and Grandpa, was on that trip. Long, long ago. I was pretty brave going from somebody who thinks, the police are beating people down in the streets and tanks running over people to, going out to visit people in the countryside. It's quite a leap, I suppose, but it was a life-changing experience. And I learned a lot about, I thought I learned a lot about it on that trip. And it made me decide to come back. So I went back to the United States for a little bit, went back to work, and after a while I decided to come back to China. And the second time I came out, I stayed for a month. And during that month, I went to a lot of places. I went to Shanghai, which was amazing, by the way, just as it is today. I mean, it's changed, of course, but, the giant buildings, a huge city. And the thing that I remember most about it after having been to Beijing, was how Western it was. If you go to Shanghai, this is why other foreigners really like Shanghai, because it's a little closer to what they're used to. You can still, find, it's a very Western city. If you go, they have old Art Deco buildings, and they've got, it feels more like a Western city. That's all I can say. Just very different from Beijing, for example. Now, a lot of cities in China have tried to emulate Shanghai, so you'll find their, big walking street for shopping and giant shopping malls. I think that's why I like Beijing more, is it's unique. It's just, there's not really any other cities like Beijing. It's unique. And maybe I should make another trip out there after this is over. That's another place I need to go. Another one is Yiwu, which is where I went on my second time being in China, another city that I went to. I really like that place. Now, that was different too for other reasons. Yiwu in Zhejiang province, which happens to be heavily affected by the virus right now, has a lot of people from the Middle East. So if you like that sort of food, they have it in an abundance. They also have a lot of people from Korea, so you can get really, really good Korean barbecue there, as well as, of course, Chinese food. And the thing that brought me there is Yiwu is an international trade city. I mean, they have this huge trade mall, I would call it, where you can get, basically, it's not meant for you to go and just buy stuff for yourself. It's to buy in bulk. So everything you could ever think of. At the time, you know, that was way back when. The MP3 players were still a big thing. I remember they had some shops selling MP3 player watches, which I got a sample one and I was going to buy a bunch of them. I didn't, but I remember that was really cool back then. Really anything you can think of. So if you want to do trade and you don't want to just, you know, get online on like Alibaba or something and, you know, just go with what you see, and you want to actually get out and sample the product and talk with the people, Yiwu is an excellent place to go because that's what it's all about. So there are basically probably thousands of shops in this place, buildings and buildings, just every type of product you could think of, electronics, regular house type stuff, you know, if you need blankets, belts. Yeah, I have a funny story about Yiwu I can tell you about getting lost. So as I mentioned, Yiwu has everything. So one day I decided just to go out walking and I got lost and I was having trouble finding my way back. So I'm going along, you know, and I'm on this road and everywhere I go, it's nothing but shops selling belts. And after like 30 minutes of walking on the street with nothing but belts, I'm like, okay, this isn't leading anywhere. And I need to go to the next street or something. I've got to get, you know, my bearings and figure out where I am. So I go to the next street and I'm walking along and then I realize, you know, this street, this is even worse because this is nothing but shops selling women's underwear. And finally I got off of that street and I see a taxi cab and I notice it's just starting to rain. So I'm like, okay, I need to get in this taxi cab and I'll just show them my address and they'll take me home and everything will be fine. But this guy, again, you know, this Arab guy's getting out and he's arguing with the taxi driver and finally comes up to me and he's like, hey, this taxi guy is a liar. He'll cheat you. Don't take this taxi. And I'm thinking like, you know, thanks for telling me, but, you know, it's starting to rain and I need to get this taxi because I don't see any other taxis coming. So I get in this taxi and sure enough, what does he do? He stops and lets all his friends in. And I paid for a bunch of people's taxi ride is essentially what happened before I finally got home. He didn't even drop me off close to where I was at. I finally just gave up and got out. Paid a bunch of money for everybody else's ride. And yeah, I should have listened to the guy. It was a cheat, but I did finally make it back. But Yiwu is an incredible place. Anybody that's looking to do business or trade in China, I recommend going there and visiting the International Trade Mall because, well, they've got everything. And the people are all set up to be able to, you know, ship your stuff wherever you need to go. They know all about the laws, you know, as far as import and duty taxes and all that stuff. They can get you set up. And you probably get a good deal. I mean, of course, you better negotiate with them, but yeah, it's a great place to go. You can actually see the product and, yeah, talk to the people instead of just getting on some website and hoping for the best when they ship it all the way across the ocean and it gets to you and then find out it's nothing like what you thought it was going to be. So, good way to go. I mean, you can still get ripped off, but, you know, at least you know where to find them in that case instead of just online. So definitely go to Yiwu. I found it to be an incredible place. It was also the first place I got to experience Chinese opera. So the Chinese opera, my first taste of that, there was this back street where all the Chinese people went to buy food and stuff. I guess you'd call it a night market today. They don't have a lot of those left in China. They've kind of shut them all down. But they had this big night market, and normally they don't have a big stage, but this one did. They had this big stage, and there were people doing Chinese opera. And my first impression was, what is that sound, you know? The style of singing is a little bit, well, you'd have to experience. You can look up a video if you want of Chinese opera and see for yourself. But I've grown to appreciate it a little bit more because of, the stories they tell. But it was quite a shock. I also got these noodles there. They were so spicy. I can handle spicy food, but those were ridiculous. Yeah, Yiwu. Definitely a good place to go for business. Or if you just want to go see, any Chinese city is going to be an interesting place to go. That trip was also my first experience with Bengbu, which is the big city that's nearby. And I didn't really get to see much of it back then, but yeah, it's a nice place. It's a fast-growing city here in China. At least it was before this happened. It used to be a good place to buy a house. Now it's gotten quite expensive. The prices, of course, across China have been shooting up very dramatically for quite a while now. I have to wonder what effect this whole virus thing is going to have on the housing prices. Something tells me that they could become a little cheaper. I don't know. It depends. I'm sure the government's going to try and prevent that from happening, but I'm not sure what they can do at this point. If people are losing their businesses and people can't work, they might find themselves in need of cash, or they might find themselves unable to pay that bill, and pretty soon they're going to be unloading those houses, and well, there's not going to be many people to buy. So that's a fear I have, that maybe the housing market here is in danger of collapsing. We'll see. That would be devastating for the economy as well, because their economy is very dependent on that housing market. It keeps the steel companies going, and all of these government-owned businesses, they kind of keep their business alive just from the housing market. So if you're wondering why there's so many houses all the time being built, there's all the videos out there about ghost cities or whatever, that's why. They keep building to keep the economy going, but something tells me that that's going to I don't want to say it's going to backfire, but, well, maybe. We'll see. Let's hope not, but it doesn't look good from my perspective. Now, the last city that I ended up in is Hefei, which is the capital of Anhui province, on that long trip, which is where I got sick. Now, anyone who's traveled abroad knows that you always run the risk of getting sick from food at some point. And back then, things were very different. So I think, to this day, I still think it was because of some ice. Like, I got a drink and made the mistake of telling them to put ice in it. And maybe the ice was not from clean water, I don't know. But either way, I got really, really sick and ended up not eating for like 2 weeks. I lost a lot of weight. There goes the neighbor, driving away in his cart, looking back at us. I lost a lot of weight. I remember the experience. Of course, I was afraid to go to the hospital. For one thing, in the United States, if you go to the hospital, you're going to get a huge bill. So this was one thing I was worried about. Like, okay, I'm feeling sick, but I don't really want to go to the hospital because huge bill. And again, also, I'm in a foreign country, and I'm thinking, like, maybe the hospital's not so good here. And finally, my friend convinced me that I should go to the hospital after, a few days of not eating. And so I go to the hospital, and they take my temperature, and they do some tests. And my friend and I'm like, okay, so what's the deal? And they just look back, the doctor says something, and they just look at me, and the doctor says it's serious. I'm like, okay, well, okay. I don't know what it is I've got, but okay, it's serious. Next thing I know, they're, putting an IV in and putting some kind of stuff, and I have no idea what they're doing, They're just putting stuff into my arm, into my vein. It helped me to feel better. And then, it brought the fever down, and I guess put some fluids in me. But, so I go back to the hotel, and I've been told by the doctor, the only thing that I'm allowed to eat is this rice porridge stuff. Very plain, no flavor. I call it rice goop. I hate it to this day. And I kept thinking, like, oh man, I just want an ice cold glass of water or something. And nope, it's got to be hot water. That was a miserable time. But the first thing I ate after I was finally able to eat normal food was this bowl of noodles soup that they make. Oh, So good. So much different than, you know, you go to the Chinese restaurant in America, they have like egg drop soup or hot and sour soup. This stuff was delicious. It wasn't any of those things. It was like a vegetable soup with noodles. I don't know what you would call it exactly. They just say it's soup. But it was good. Probably because I hadn't eaten any normal food for so long, but it was quite delicious. And after getting better, I went back to Beijing and flew home to the United States. And I stayed there for a little bit and finally came back, and, well, you get the idea. I kept coming back until I made it permanent. So you put a long time between then and now, and here we are in 2020, and I'm still here living in China. I've got my family, got my wife, my son, in-laws, a car, everything you can think of about normal life here in China. What an experience. That's all I can say. Now, I know there's a lot of negative things going around about China online, and, you know, I've been kind of irritated myself with the way the local government here in this town has been handling things, but I really have to say that after this is over, definitely come and see China. There are so many things to see, so many beautiful places, so many cultural experiences you can have, different foods to have, different amazing cities to see. It would be terrible if people decided not to come back, or that, you know, China's a bad place. It's really, really a beautiful country, and there's so much to see, so much to experience, that it would be really sad if people decided not to come. So after this is over, again, I'll probably go out and I'll showcase some of the places that I've been and make videos showing you what I've seen and experienced, and maybe you'll decide you'd like to see it too. But and I hope you do. I hope that people do come out to see China when this is over. And I think I've gone on and on about things, so maybe in the next one I can talk about how I met my wife. It'll give you something to look forward to if you're interested, or something to tune out, I suppose, if not. But in either case, if you like what you see, go ahead and share these videos, subscribe, put a like on it, and I'll keep making them either way. So I guess we'll see you in the next one.